Universal, they're expanding, and they're expanding fast. And with such rapid expansion, we're going to be seeing some new rides, new lands, new projects, all opening in just years' time. I've already discussed in a previous video how Universal, they have dozens of new projects that are just waiting to be built. However, Universal, they will not tell us what these projects are. This company, they're very tight-lipped about their future expansions. In fact, they're probably not going to tell us anything about these new projects until maybe a year or two before their opening date. It's unfortunate, but that doesn't mean we can't speculate. Even though we don't know a whole lot about what Universal is doing going forward, it doesn't mean that there aren't any rumors floating around. For instance, the concept of a Legend of Zelda land, a Pokemon expansion, and a Dark Universe expansion. All fantastic ideas. However, a lot of these rumors don't have any validity to them. These rumors, they're exactly what they are. They're rumors. There's not a whole lot of truth behind them. A lot of them exist in our own personal headcanon. Projects that we want to see happen someday in the future, but there's not a lot of evidence backing them yet. And you know what? That's perfectly fine. It's fun to speculate on what's coming next. I'm sure all of you watching this video have some kind of Universal ride or attraction or land that you want to see happen, but it only exists within your imagination. For instance, I have an idea for a land that I think would be an excellent fit for Universal. A land that's been brewing in my mind for the better part of a year that I personally believe would be a logical step forward for Universal. In my mind, I have a concept for an epic Universal land that isn't based on one sole movie, rather a variety of films. A genre of film. Ladies and gentlemen, I propose the idea of sci-fi land. An entire Universal expansion on sci-fi movies. Think about it, sci-fi or science fiction is a genre of film that's existed for 80 plus years. There is a massive catalog of movies and franchises that Universal can pull from and incorporate into one distinct land. This is the equivalent to something like Dark Universe, where instead of devoting the entire area to one movie, it's a cluster of movies. It's a melting pot of horror. Even though the main attraction of the land is called Monsters Unchained, the Frankenstein experiment, the ride, it isn't solely based on Frankenstein. No! You got every classic monster within this attraction, like Dracula, the creature from the Black Lagoon, the Invisible Man. It's a culmination of the niche. So what if Universal, they took the exact same principles they used for Dark Universe and applied it to sci-fi? That would be unique. That would have broad appeal. And most importantly, Universal, they don't have to devote the entire land to one IP. Because even though sci-fi is this massive movie genre, I can't really think of one franchise that can stand on its own two legs as a theme park land. I'm sure there's probably a couple, like Dune, that's probably one. Or I can't think of anything else. There are a lot of great franchises out there, but none of them can really translate into a land or an attraction. Most movies can only exist as a movie, and there's not much expansion outside that medium, and very few franchises can actually be adapted into a 15-acre plot of land. Because when it comes down to it, when you're building a theme park land, it's all about the setting. If a movie has a terrible setting, then there's not a lot you can really adapt. So, if Universal decided to opt for a quote-unquote sci-fi land, then potentially they can take on a lot of creative liberties. They can inspire the land to the entire genre of science fiction, with bits and pieces of it being connected to actual franchises. Again, kind of like Dark Universe, where you're going into the land of Darkmoor, and then you're seeing elements from classic monster movies. So they build a sci-fi land, they can potentially theme the entire area to some kind of hypothetical future. Kind of like a different take on Tomorrowland at Disney, except it will be more IP based. Now, if Universal ever wanted to go down this route, it begs the question, what IPs would they even adapt into this land? Originally, when I pondered upon this idea, I thought they can do the exact same thing as Dark Universe, and theme the land to classic sci-fi as opposed to modern. After all, like Universal was to horror, they were one of the original pioneers of sci-fi. Unless you're a 1950s connoisseur, or a fan of the Sci-Fi Cafe at Hollywood Studios, you're probably not not too familiar with some of the classic sci-fi movies of yesteryear, films such as, get ready for this, Attack of the 50-Foot Woman, Forbidden Planet, The Day the Earth Stood Still, The Wasp Woman, The Blob, Plan 9 from Outer Space, The Giant Gila Monster. These are all real movies, by the way. The Man from Planet X. Who thought of these? Universal, they could do this. They could theme an entire land to classic sci-fi, and I would not be opposed. But adapting modern or early modern sci-fi movies would probably be the better play. Oh, and just to be clear, when I say sci-fi, I'm primarily referring to franchises with a futuristic tone and or heavy science-like elements, if that makes sense. And that's because the definition of a sci-fi movie is way too broad. For example, wouldn't a movie like Jurassic Park count as sci-fi? I mean, think about it. The entire premise of Jurassic Park is bringing dinosaurs back to life by using DNA that was found in prehistoric mosquitoes that were encased in amber. I don't know about you, but that sounds pretty sciencey to me. But I'm not going to completely classify this film as a sci-fi fiction movie. Now, if Universal was really going to theme a land to sci-fi movies, I think that there are a few movie franchises that would make worthy additions. The three IPs that I would incorporate into a sci-fi land would be Back to the Future, Terminator, and Star Trek. If Universal were to build a futuristic sci-fi land, these franchises would be the obvious pick. Let me tell you why. Now, Back to the Future and Terminator, these are two franchises that Universal has worked with before. Who can forget the Back to the Future ride that predated The Simpsons? And the legendary Terminator 2 show, the $60 million T2 3D stuntacular that was the only good follow-up to Terminator 2.
Talk to the hand.
I'm so sad that Universal got rid of the Terminator 2 show. Yeah, the Jason Bourne show, it was a worthy successor. I think it's really well done, but Terminator! I love Terminator. Terminator 2 is my favorite movie of all time. So in my heart, there's no replacing the T2 show. But if Universal built a sci-fi land, then they can finally rejuvenate Terminator's presence in the parks. The only issue I have with putting Terminator in sci-fi land is the setting. The setting for Terminator's future, it's not the best. In fact, it's pretty, how do I put this? Dark. Terminator might be an action-packed and heartwarming story, but the futuristic AI undertones are a little depressing. So theming a subsection of a land to this, a skull-ridden active war zone of LA, might not work. The only way they can incorporate Terminator is if they theme one section of sci-fi land to an optimistic future and the other side of sci-fi land to a nihilistic future, making a contrast of not only the area, but the genre itself. Now, if they included other franchises like Back to the Future, this ride, it would be a straight roller coaster play. They need to make a Back to the Future roller coaster. I've been saying this for years. It's so obvious. They can make the roller coaster train look like a DeLorean. They can have the ride reach a speed of 88 miles per hour. I actually said Back to the Future would be the best fit to replace Hollywood Rip Ride Rockit, but if they made a sci-fi land, then screw that, put it here. It's perfect. Universal, build a Back to the Future roller coaster, please. Build a Back to the Future roller coaster and also a Star Trek ride. Why Star Trek? Well, my dad likes it. I've never actually seen a Star Trek movie or show, but I'm still familiar with the franchise. How could I not be? It's the second biggest IP that takes place in space. Number one would be Star Wars. In fact, Star Trek is usually considered to be the off-brand version of Star Wars. And I'm aware that I probably just pissed off 1,040-year-olds just by saying that. But it's true, Star Trek isn't in the cultural zeitgeist like how Star Wars is. At least for the time being. Star Wars is kind of on its way out. Thanks, Disney. Regardless, I do think there's enough source material and potential for a Star Trek ride within Sci-Fi Land, and I think it would be hilarious if Universal built a better Star Trek-inspired subland than Disney's full-on Star Wars land. Disney, they kind of dropped the ball with Galaxy's Edge, and if Universal can do a lot more with a lesser franchise, then that would be comical. But there we go. This is what I would want with a new land going to Universal. A sci-fi themed experience that is one half nihilistic future and one half optimistic future, with rides that can pertain to Star Trek, Terminator, and or Back to the Future. 3 massive franchises that likely can't stand on their own, but can coexist within one massive land. And if Universal wanted to, they could build this land. I don't see variables like licensing to be a problem. They've worked with companies like Paramount before, so they can easily get the Terminator and Star Trek IP. The only thing that I would say is holding Sci-Fi Land back is marketability. Are these franchises still popular enough to sell to the public? Again, not on their own. If they market a land themed to a genre, then it'll have a better chance of standing out. It doesn't matter if some of these IPs haven't had a good installment in their franchise for over 2 decades. There's just no replacing good movies. The original 2 Terminators are amazing, and the Back to the Future trilogy, still one of the best trilogies out there. Star Trek, again, I'm not too familiar with, but I'm sure most of the franchise is good.
They're fast. They? Not she. I've never felt like a she or a her. I would prefer they or them.
So if anyone from Universal is watching, please throw Sci-Fi Land on the idea board. It is possible for internet rumors to become a full-on theme park land. You know Monsters Inc. land that's going to Hollywood Studios? Yeah, that used to be an internet wish list. It was a concept that a few people had online that eventually made its way to the Disney higher-ups, you know, after 20 years. But hey, it's actually happening now. Same thing with Villains Land going to the Magic Kingdom. That was an internet-created concept, and Disney just so happened to take notice of it. So if you enjoy the idea of Sci-Fi Land, you know, give me a like.